and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I'm coming to you live from New York and joined by Clive Posselt, who's back in the UK from Instrumentix. Clive, how are you?
I'm doing great, sir. It's nice to see that we're out traveling again and going out and meeting clients and interacting with the world a bit more.
It's really good to see, isn't it? It was a flight there, which was my first flight for nearly 2 years, and great to be back up in the air again.
Yeah, how the world's changed. Us folk who used to spend our lives on aeroplanes, it's very different these days.
It is indeed. Although they're very busy, it was an absolutely jammed out flight, and the airports are pumping again. So it's good to see. So look, this is a good point to actually lead on as well. Last time we spoke was back in the office. This was had you on the show maybe 2-3 years ago. Loved talking to you about the sort of the formation and growth of Instrumentix at that stage. Got loads more to talk to you about that. I know there's been a busy couple of years since last we had you on the show as well. So I'm really keen to find out a little bit about that. But before we do it, for those who haven't watched that magic episode a couple of years ago, and I know there'll be a couple out there, not many, but a couple. Give us a little bit of background to yourself, Clive, and Instrumentix.
Yeah, I spent 20 odd years in capital markets, predominantly in electronic trading. Spent some time at Lehman Brothers, Internet, and then latterly at Barclays. And then decided that I wanted to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial, but using my experience. So managed to get an introduction to our founder, Steve Hicks. He's a great guy. We hit it off, joined forces with him a few years ago as commercial director. Steve looks after the technology. I run the business side, so also sales, marketing, finance, etc. sits with me. And it's been a great journey. Really enjoyed it. We've had some great success over the last couple of years, and looking forward to some more. And things are moving very much in the right direction.
Sounds fantastic. I want to find out a lot more about that. I like hearing about success over the last couple of years because there's been companies there who've got it absolutely right, and I know you guys are amongst that as well. But tell us a little bit beforehand about Instrumentix itself. So you joined forces, you say, you're looking after the sales side of it. Talk to us about the product and who's using it and how you're helping people.
Yeah, we're a flow monitoring vendor. So effectively, we provide monitoring and performance analytics for distributed trading platforms. It's asset class agnostic. We have customers who are banks, brokers, exchanges, proprietary trading houses. And effectively, if you think of a sort of Formula One style analogy, you wouldn't send Lewis Hamilton out in his car without monitoring every aspect of the performance of that and what the potential knock-on effects are. And same with distributed trading platforms. Why would you hire great technologists, great quants, great traders, but not actually monitor the performance of that platform that they're using to interact with the markets, both either from themselves or on behalf of customers, to really make sure they squeeze out the most out of performance for P&L basis or customer experience if they're actually executing clients.
I think that's such an important aspect as well because there's been so much focus on that. You talked there about squeezing out, and I love the idea of capacity at the moment because I think if you look at the market and where the sector's swung to, efficiency, getting the most out of everything, capacity has been so important. And it's companies like yours that have really focused in on that have been able to sustain, grow and succeed because of that, because they're adding value and allowing businesses, people are recognising the sort of power of technology to get more efficient and get more out of every individual in that business to sort of unlock the potential of the asset managers, the exchanges and the brokerages that you're talking about earlier on as well. Tell me a little bit about, you mentioned it there about a good couple of years and how the business has sort of moved through that. As a commercial director, it's always a sort of daunting period, isn't it, when you hear global pandemics being thrown around. And I know that probably 18 months ago, 20 months ago, however long it is now, you're probably sat there with a little bit of let's roll the sleeves up here. We've got some work to do. Talk to me about the journey that you've had and how the business has succeeded and where you are at the moment.
Yeah, I think pandemic was difficult when it kicked in from everybody, and you sort of sat back and said, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to work through this? Firstly, we've always been able to work remotely, so that's been really useful for us. Secondly, I think we found relatively quickly people were willing to engage on a more remote basis than they might have done previously. Typically in the past, sort of initial engagements are done largely face-to-face, and then you go into more remote working together as you go through a proof of concept or a valuation of your product. But I think people move to that ability to cut through the noise and effectively look at the functionality and the technology relatively quickly. Through that, we've grown some really good partnerships, actually, and a couple of which we're going to be talking more about more formally in the coming weeks. But one which is typically interesting is a company actually down in Latin America called Toby Capital Markets, and we've formed a great partnership with them. We're working with them across Latin America now. Initial engagements have been in Brazil, where we've got a number of clients now, and we're expanding across conversations in Mexico, Chile, and even Peru. And these are guys I never even talked to before the pandemic kicked off, and we formed an extraordinary relationship. So it's been amazing how we've been able to connect remotely, but also the ability to use technology to provide access to products, provide remote access into products, and allows people to evaluate them without having to have a physical relationship. So I think what we found is acquisition of new customers, not just both in Europe, North America, now Latin America, and we're increasingly starting to get interest from Asia, is not just dedicated to being in front of people. It's always good. It is always a relationship business at the end of the day. But we've worked well through this period, and it hasn't been an issue for us in our growth journey.
So at the top of the show there about sort of airwaves opening up, and we've been back in New York for the first time since December 2019. You're there and you've globalized the business and moved into new territories and built new partnerships without getting on a plane, without doing those things. You touched upon it there about the sort of, it's still going to be great to be in front of people and press fresh. What's your view on how that sort of continues as you sort of scaled there, and you talk about Latin America, you talk about Asia and a sort of genuine global opportunity, all from home in many aspects, in many respects. What's that look like for the future? And do you see yourselves being on planes again and doing some of the face-to-face stuff, or is this going to be this a remote world to stay for you guys?
I don't think we stay a completely remote world. That's not just human nature, and that's not typically how we generally interact with people. I think we're going to have a hybrid. I think it's always good. It's a relationship business. You want to be in touch with people. You want to be in front of them. But do you need to be on an aeroplane out to Europe every other week? Do you need to be doing a roadshow around New York and Chicago and out to the West Coast every few weeks? I don't think you probably do. I think ad hoc interaction and getting on a plane once or twice a year, I think will be incredibly helpful. But I do think people's willingness to do that and even need to do that is very, very different to what it was before.
Absolutely. I think that's been one of the big features of everything, hasn't it? That people are looking at things and looking at opportunities in different ways. And I think one of the themes that we've seen on this show over the course of last year has been people taking negatives into positive and looking at different ways of reimagining various elements of work, be it that remote aspect or be it partnerships, and looking at different ways of doing different things. The partnership model, I know you guys have always been quite collaborative as a business, but we've seen a hell of a lot more collaboration in the industry over the last, over the last 2 years in particular. And that's not just in the sort of vendor and supplier world, but also within the custodians themselves. It's been a big theme of capital markets to see a lot more collaboration in the industry. Talk to us about how that became a strategy for you. Is it something you were always steeped in, or has it been something now where you said that this is an opportunity to do things better, turn negatives into positives?
It's something we've always been keen on and something we've worked on previously. But I think, again, the pandemic has brought us closer together to organisations that have real synergies with what we're doing, either from a product perspective or a delivery into a geographic area, which is undersupplied by similar vendors. So I think it's something that has certainly broken down barriers and has allowed us to accelerate our interactions and ability to partner with people. So I think it's something that's probably happened a bit quicker than it might have done.
And you mentioned there about acceleration. Another thing that the pandemic's done is thrown light on products and shown how necessary and how valuable they can be to people. People have been out there and actively saying, look, how can we maximise our capacity? How can we increase our efficiency? How can we improve? You're another business that has become, I guess, increasingly relevant because of to the market. The product's become something there which is moved. I heard this said some weeks ago about another business where they hadn't become a nice to have, they become a must have. Is that where you feel you guys are heading at the moment as well?
Yeah, I think we absolutely are. We are very customer centric in the way the product was built right from the outset. It was always built to be very open, easy to integrate, both with data to be ingested, to enrich the data that we're producing and provide more value, but also integrate the back end with clients' other systems. Effectively, you could almost say we sit as middleware in some ways between areas. So that's always been really important to us, both from the technology perspective and from me, having worked on electronic trading desks for many years. We've effectively been our own customers. So we've built it in a manner that is, very scalable. It is very easily integrated. It's all about providing value. And it's also a very open framework, but it's multi-tenanted, which means we can provide value across the whole chain within a customer organization. It's not just for the network team. It's not just for the application team. We have users on trading desks. We have clients giving our data and access into their own very secure lens on their data within the organization. So, we've got users across quants, traders, network teams, application teams, and we're able to provide what they want, and the data is specific to their job in customized dashboards, and segregating that information so they only see what's absolutely pertinent to them.
I think there's a really interesting piece you mentioned there, and I want to just zoom in on probably a little throwaway there, where you talked about the sort of, we've been in that situation, we've been there on the buyer side, and you look at businesses who I think have looked at that, and where products have become essential is where you have that blend of strong technology converged with strong commercial acumen at the same sort of time. Yeah. And you mentioned there about the founding, that sort of partnership of technologists versus the commercial side of it, and I think that's something which is a really strong and consistent theme that you look at between businesses that go in there. If it's all commercial and no tech, you can sometimes be thinking about a product there that isn't fit for purpose. Good commercial things who are looking at their problem but not necessarily able to find the answer or technically find the answer. Or you find technologists who are over-engineering things to find a problem that doesn't really exist. When you have those two worlds combined, like you're talking about there, it can create some really exciting things and push strategies further forward to really exciting proposals as well. Speaking of that, you've got all sorts of different aspects that you look at with your business strategically. You've got elements of managed service within what you're doing. There's subscription models that you're talking about. There's growth into new geographies. How does this all combine to make you really consistent as to how you take your go-to-market from a commercial aspect and take this good idea with a problem exists, which is becoming a must-have to all the people who you're talking to? How do you make sure that you keep that commercial strategy in place and you have the ability to pivot, as we've seen this sort of as you've spoken about beforehand, with the partnerships that are coming through and all those sort of things, but keep it to plan and know where you're heading at the same sort of time?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've always felt that, commercially, you want to base that around the value that your customer's getting out of your product. So rather than what's historically been done in our space is pricing according to the amount of data you're consuming, well, what about the value that customers getting from that data that you consume? So, obviously somebody running a very plain vanilla agency execution business is not going to have anywhere near the functionality requirements somebody doing proprietary trading, market making, etc. So we're very much basing our commercial offering around the value that the customer is seeing. The other thing that's quite interesting is our product doesn't need to be delivered as an appliance. So during an evaluation process, as we're getting to know the customer, we work with them to size the hardware that they're going to need to run our product for their use case. And what that allows them to do is go and use commodity hardware from their usual suppliers, which helps with the hardware support element, but also they have much greater buying power generally than we have. So it actually keeps the total cost of ownership down for the customer, which is always important in budgetary constrained times. And lastly, I would say almost all of our deployments now are done on a managed service basis. And this is us actually completely running the deployed environment on behalf of the client. And this is in organizations that even a few years ago would just not even envisage doing a managed service and allowing somebody like us to run that for them. It comes about, I think, the more ability to trust, given the way technology has evolved. But secondly, our clients, bright people, they're experts in their fields, but they're incredibly time poor. So if they can actually be a consumer of a service rather than actually run a service on behalf of internal customers, that makes their life a lot easier, and they're able to get on with their jobs. And goes back to what we were discussing earlier about operational resilience, but also the ability to get the most out of the technology you're using.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? When you look at that confidence for people to do that, that's been a big theme of 2021 and 2020. But the same thing is people being able to have that trust to let experts play as experts. I think there's been that sort of my toys sort of mentality in the capital markets for a long time, where people wanted to own everything, and trust is exactly the right word. And I think people have exceeded that. Or accepted, should I say, the fact that experts are experts, and so it's not a sign of weakness in some instances or a loss of control. It's about run your race, swim in your lane, and make sure you're concentrating on your game and bring people in who can do the right things around that.
Completely agree with you. And ultimately, it's about efficiency. Yeah,
absolutely, which I think is probably the catchphrase for 2021 in terms of financial technology. Ultimately is about efficiency. Let's talk about a couple of other bits and pieces. Look, I want people to look at this and recognise from businesses like yours, you've had loads of experience in some of the biggest and brightest companies in the world, and you're doing something really, really exciting over the last few years as well. You've seen lots of different things over the last 18 months. If you were to look at that and say your biggest lessons, the biggest things you've taken away that have allowed you and the business to thrive over a difficult period, what would you say they'd be?
I think resilience. It's being able to adapt, be able to pivot quickly. It's the ability to grow relationships quickly through confidence, not only in your product, but when you're interacting with people remotely for the first time. It's just a bit about building trust, and we've touched on this before. It's that whole ability to broach the ether, as we're talking over at the moment, and actually build a real sort of personal relationship, which it's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of work, and you have to go that extra mile to provide that trust factor and provide that confidence that you want people to see in your ability to service their business and really add value to what they're doing.
Do you know what? I think that's such an interesting aspect, and now you say it, I'm just thinking about it in my experience over the last couple of years. There are people there who I've met a number of times on Zoom, people I've had on the show who I've never actually met in person, and gradually I'm meeting them in person over the course of the last 6 months or so. And again, being out here, there'll be people I meet again who have been virtual connections. And when you see them in person, it's literally like you know the ins and outs of it. And I love that. I love the fact that the digital world has made the world a lot smaller. I love the opportunities that's come back. But I think there's this big importance of combining the two and making sure that personal relationships and physical relationships remain, as something there which we run by. And I think it's such an interesting aspect to look at. Let's go back to a theme as well that we've spoken about beforehand about some of the things we've seen over this year, with efficiency being at the very kernel of what's happening. We're rapidly approaching the end of 2021, which I find staggering, but I'll probably say that more and more every year as I get older. But as we move into 2022, there's so many opportunities. Again, it's a world there which has still got so many question marks in terms of what happens and where we go, and macroeconomics and everything in between, and so much volatility that remains in so many different areas. We've seen the rise and rise of cryptocurrencies over the last 18 months or so. Although there's been obviously curves for a long time, I really feel that as an asset class, it's been there to stay. We've seen trends like managed services, as we've spoken about, gain traction. We've seen so many different things happen and accelerate through the digital acceleration we've seen over the course of the last 18 months. 2022, get your crystal ball out. What do we expect to see in the year ahead? And what are some of the areas that you guys are going to be focusing on to make sure you're maximising that at the same time?
I think, crypto, you've mentioned, it's really coming of age, and you start to see the ability for institutional investors to get involved. And I think that is going to increasingly evolve, even though it is still a very complex subject, but I think that's going to have increased evolution. I think some of the interesting guests you've had on your show over the last little while, Alistair Haynes talking about Aquis and their subscription model is fascinating. You think about Adam Toms over at OpenFin and the whole ability on the desktop integration is fascinating. And I think from my perspective, where I see Instrumentix continue to grow, continue to add value to customers, is the openness in our product and our ability to integrate and fit as a core part of a client's infrastructure, and giving them the ability to just see in totality what's going across their organization, but also being able to interact with other vendors to add increased value, but really allow people to be more efficient, be able to sit back and see, okay, what's the knock-on effect of what I'm seeing here? So where do I need to target my investment to gain improvement and be able to provide, either increased P&L or better services for my clients? So I think from my perspective, this whole idea of not being sort of an island of data or an island of value, it's the ability to innovate and integrate with other businesses or other parts of a customer's organization to truly add value to what they're doing.
Yeah, value. I think that if you're looking for a trend that I think has been so important, is only going to continue to have that continued snowball effect. Is this service, is this company, is what I'm doing and investing into adding as much value as it can possibly take? And I think the companies that get that right, I think, are going to be really, really exciting. It's about this time of year where we start to turn our attention to our next magazine, The Financial Technologist, where we look at the most influential companies of the year ahead. I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there about a number of the different things that we'll be seeing. And I don't see it being a complete revolution to what we've seen over here, but a natural evolution of everything becoming that much more embedded into the new way of doing things, which is really, really exciting, because I think it's so far on the right track about that collaboration and efficiency and focuses on what we want to look at. Clive, let's finish talking a little bit about Instrumentix and what's next. Tell me about what's on your roadmap for 2022. Tell us what we should get excited about, and tell us about who should be getting in touch with you and what the best way for them to do that is.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot more of the same with our partnerships going forward next year and expanding on those, which we're hugely excited about. The other area which we're also very, very excited about is running our product for clients up in the cloud, which is an increasing thing we're being asked for. So we've always been able to do that. So that's something we're going to move forward with at pace, which hasn't been typically able with some of our competitors. So I think that's going to be clearly a large aspect of what we're doing next year. If I go back to the Formula One analogy, anybody doing any form of electronic trading, be it a broker, a bank, an exchange, in whatever asset class, you need to understand the performance of your infrastructure and how that's affecting your P&L and how that's affecting your customer experience. And these days, if you can squeeze an extra couple of basis points of performance for your clients, it means either getting on a broker list or staying on a broker list. So it has some very big commercial ramifications being able to do that. So I think the people who should be talking to us is anybody in that world, who really wants to understand how to power the performance of their infrastructure and make the most of it, both for themselves and both for their customers as well.
I love the sound of that, Clive. And how should they get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach out and have this discussion?
Very easy, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, both on the Instrumentix page or me specifically, or on instrumentix.co.uk. There's loads of calls to action on there to get in touch, have a demo, etc., etc. So we'd love to hear from them.
Absolutely fantastic, Clive. It's always been a pleasure. I found this fascinating. There's so many different areas to dive into. It's always great having a chat to you, and you come out with more knowledge and more insight, more excitement as well about what's happening moving further forward. So, a great pleasure having you on the show. Let's make sure we don't leave it 2-3 years next time as well, and welcome you back on to see what's happening in the Instrumentix world and the rise of the business. It's so good to see, so good to have you back on, and thanks for joining us today.
Brilliant. Really appreciate your time, Toby. Always a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your time in New York and safe trip back. See you soon.
Looking forward to it. I will see you very soon. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks so much.